is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
As China's two top political bodies prepare to convene in Beijing, what can Africa expect? More countries in Africa receive COVAX inoculations as vaccination rollout gets underway in Africa. And learning on the go, how one teacher is helping save children from illiteracy in Kenya's Marsabit County. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to you live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers. Here are stories that are making headlines in the world of business with Uche.
Thank you, Hannah. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live. The U.S. issues final anti-dumping tariffs on aluminium from 18 nations. And Zimbabwe seeks communal farmers to boost its macadamia production. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, it is back to you, Hannah.
We'll see you in a bit, Uche. Thank you for that. Well, we begin in Beijing, where China's top political advisory body, the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, has laid out plans for the country's annual political season. The spokesperson of the CPPCC met the press on Wednesday, covering everything from international cooperation to Hong Kong. Sao Bing reports.
CPPCC spokesperson Guo Weiming confirmed the agenda for this year's two sessions as he spoke to the press in Beijing on Wednesday.
The conference will start on Thursday and is set to conclude on March 10th. That's 6.5 days. Organizers learned their lessons from last year, when epidemic prevention requirements were also in place, and greater levels of efficiency were achieved.
As an issue of both national and global concern, COVID-19 vaccinations were high on the agenda in the news conference.
By the end of February, China had administered over 52 million doses. China has strictly carried out high technical standards while quickly producing its vaccines, meeting WHO standards. By the end of February, China had provided vaccine assistance to 69 countries and 2 international organizations. China's international vaccine cooperation has nothing to do with diplomacy, but is an example of the concept of building a community of shared future.
When asked about the recent moves by Beijing to make sure patriots govern Hong Kong, Guo said it's a core and fundamental part of the one country, two systems policy.
Enacting the Hong Kong national security law and improving the electoral system of the special administrative region is all about upholding one country, two systems, and ensuring that the policy progresses steadily. The CPPCC will firmly support patriots governing Hong Kong.
As for whether China's international image has taken a hit over the past year, the spokesperson said there's been a lack of understanding from hostile politicians in some quarters. He said it would be better if China's international partners got to know the country through experience rather than hearsay. Cao Bing, CGTN, Beijing.
Well, China's two sessions is a key event in the country's political calendar. CGTN's Daniel Arab Moy takes a look at its wider impact on the African continent.
China's top legislature will this week discuss how to achieve good performances in the country's economic and social development. The two sessions are expected to set key agendas for job creation, poverty eradication, and debt management. Experts say the policy outcomes of the two sessions can also benefit Africa.
We are interested in an expanded Chinese market because we will also export our goods to China. We are interested in a stable economy in China because it also means the global economy is also going to be stable.
China's cooperation with Africa has been ongoing throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Beijing dispatched medical experts and supplies to help various countries fight the coronavirus. More recently, the Chinese government has begun donating vaccines.
We do hope that the two sessions are going to debate not only the question of how to contain COVID-19, how to distribute vaccine, but specifically how to deal with the poorer part of the world, the developing part of the world.
Another cooperation effort is the Belt and Road Initiative. The BRI aims to improve connectivity between China and Africa through investment in infrastructure. And as China's economy heads towards a post-COVID era, continued goodwill is expected to be demonstrated by China towards its African partners. Daniel Arap Moi, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Well, for more on this, let's bring in Emmanuel Zwanbin, who's in Nigeria. He's a doctoral fellow at the United States International University, Africa. Well, Doctor, thank you so much for joining us. As China's two top political bodies prepare to convene in Beijing, what can Africa expect?
Well, like you know, that foreign policy is a reflection of domestic policy. And because Africa is very strategic to China, I'm going to be expecting a lot. 2 or 3 things I expect. One would be debt restructuring. 2 would be the issue of vaccine. You know what's happening around the world, vaccine nationalism. So Africa is looking forward to China making vaccine available so we can deal with that and quickly return economic activities to Africa. You know that Africa is hard hit because we have more of informal sector and which is largely affected by COVID-19. So I'm expecting that. Then obviously we would expect more of activity of Belt and Road in Africa so we can begin to build more infrastructure, open more opportunities for African people. So I should be expecting that. And China would need to do a lot more on public diplomacy in view of the reputational issues that emerge from, trying to blame China for the emergence of COVID-19. So I'm expecting that from this 2 sessions.
The meeting comes at a time when Africa is reeling from the economic and social impact of COVID-19. How might this shape China-Africa priorities?
Yeah, China has always said she's an all-weather friend of Africa. And so we would be expecting a lot more. Beyond the vaccines, like I said, I would be expecting more infrastructure investment so that can trigger creation of jobs and then economic revival of economic activities. And also expecting that China would concede to restructuring the debt so that the burden and the economic impact of the COVID-19 will be lessened on Africa. I expect that, and I always know that mutuality and friendliness towards Africa and looking after Africa's concern would play out in this 2 sessions.
And where do you see Sino-Africa relations in the post-COVID era?
Now, I'm more positive because the new government in the US would be friendly. And, the former government was really antagonistic of China in Africa. And so that really sandwiched Africa, But so now that we have a government that is friendly, I expect that we would have more robust engagement, more investment coming to Africa. And then, of course, that would trigger a more mutual relationship. So I'm going to see something better.
Thank you so much for that, Emmanuel Zwanbin, doctoral fellow at the United States International University. Well, the advance team of a UN observer mission has arrived in Libya as the country prepares for elections following a decade of conflict. The 10-member team from the UN will monitor a ceasefire signed by the 2 factions involved in the civil war. The delegation will also oversee the departure of foreign fighters. The last round of violence in Libya involved Eastern forces loyal to former Army General Khalifa Haftar and the Government of National Accord based in the capital Tripoli. However, a ceasefire agreement signed in October of last year ended the conflict with hopes of the formation of a unity government. Well, speaking to us from Cairo, CGTN's Adel Amrou, who now joins us. Adel, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us, Adel, about the UN envoys in Libya and their mission there?
This is the first delegation for the UN peacekeepers who will be sent to stand and monitor the dividing line at Sirte city, which is more or less in central Libya, and this is where the troops of the Eastern Forces, the Libyan National Army, and the Western forces stand on opposite sides, and where the ceasefire has been established and agreed upon back on 23rd of October. Now this team of 10 people, their main task is mainly to establish and facilitate the arrival of more UN monitors. The United Nations has managed to get approval from the Security Council to send unarmed peacekeepers at Sirt and Al Jufra to maintain the current ceasefire, the ceasefire has been one of the main reasons why Libyans have been successful on the political talks, and the progress politically has been quite significant since the ceasefire was established. So the United Nations Prime Mission now is to make sure that the ceasefire will last. Now this mission, after they plan the arrival of their colleagues, they will also send the first report to the United Nations Security Council on March 19. The first progress report will then guide the United Nations on how to proceed forward. Meanwhile, their presence is considered to be...
Well, we seem to have lost Adel there. We'll hope to be able to bring him back on the program. But for now, let's take a short break and return. Here's what you can expect. Mass COVID-19 vaccination rollout gets underway as more countries receive COVAX inoculations.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Again, he can hold in guns.
Machine guns from police forces toward the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. Well, Rwanda is the latest African country to receive COVID-19 vaccines from the COVAX program. 240,000 Oxford AstraZeneca doses arrived in the capital, Kigali, on Wednesday morning. More than 100,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine are expected soon from the same program. A statement from the government says that a total of 170,000 people are being targeted by the upcoming campaign. They include health personnel, frontline workers, people above 65 years old, and individuals with underlying health conditions. Well, the World Bank is preparing emergency financing targeting about 30 African countries to help access COVID-19 vaccines. This comes as the continent scrambles to secure doses. So far, only a handful of governments on the continent have launched mass vaccination campaigns, whereas some countries in wealthier parts of the world have already administered millions of doses. Most African countries are relying on global COVAX vaccine sharing scheme. Well, CGTN's Robert Nagila now brings us more on the COVAX initiative, the countries that will be benefiting and how.
After months of uncertainty, Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana became the first African countries to administer COVID-19 vaccines from COVAX on the 1st of March. Ghana received 600,000 doses, while Côte d'Ivoire got 504,000 doses. Kenya and Nigeria are receiving just over 1 million and 3.9 million initial doses respectively from COVAX. COVAX is distributing a vaccine developed by AstraZeneca and Oxford University known as Covishield. COVAX is a platform that supports the development of COVID-19 vaccines and negotiates pricing on behalf of its members. It is co-led by Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, and the World Health Organization. Now, poorer countries that get vaccines for free will receive doses of up to 20% of their populations. Those receiving the vaccine first are high-risk and vulnerable people and frontline healthcare workers.
Well, Uganda has announced that it will receive its first batch of AstraZeneca vaccines from the COVAX vaccine sharing scheme on Friday. The 864,000 doses will kick off the first phase of vaccinations next week. Priority will be given to healthcare workers, teachers, and older people. Isabel Nakira gives us the details.
Uganda is launching its vaccination campaign in a week's time. The country is aiming to inoculate 20% of its population in the first phase of vaccination. The Minister of Health says the COVID-19 jabs will be accessed from public hospitals across the country. Initial doses will be given free of charge to frontline health workers and essential groups.
This is because they are at the front line in the response to the COVID-19 pandemic and are vulnerable to infection, as has been shown by the statistics of infection. To date, 1,892 health workers have been infected and 9 have succumbed to COVID-19.
The COVAX facility has allocated Uganda over 3.5 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine. The facility, which is meant to ensure equitable distribution of vaccines globally, will dispatch the remaining 2.6 million doses by June.
The government is encouraging Ugandans to maintain mask wearing and washing hands even after vaccination. The Health Ministry warns people can still catch the virus and spread it, even though it will be a mild case.
Vaccination against COVID-19 will be voluntary in Uganda. Vaccine skepticism has been a problem in Uganda, even with the usual vaccines.
There is a minimum risk of adverse effects, and that has to be balanced, and that's why national governments would ask a consent for people taking the vaccine.
Uganda would need 45 million doses of the two-shot vaccine to cover its population of over the age of 18. More donations are expected from India and China at a later date. In the last month, Uganda has been recording low cases of COVID-19, but authorities warn the country could experience a second wave, which may be more destructive. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
As more African countries start rolling out COVID-19 vaccines, Yasser Hakim looks at the vaccination process in Egypt, the types of vaccines used, and plans for the future.
Egypt is continuing its vaccination campaign. The second phase, which includes older people and people with chronic diseases, should begin second week of March. The first phase saw the inoculation of most of the health sector workers. Dr. Ashraf Oqba, who was vaccinated, refutes the doubts of some people concerning the safety of the COVID-19 vaccines.
I only felt a small pain on the side of the injection for only a day or two, and no other side effects. The vaccine is a definite preventative tool. Those who take the vaccine create antibodies, and that makes their bodies immune to the pandemic, and even if they are inflicted with the virus, the effects will be minimal.
Egypt announced that it has purchased 100 million doses of vaccines so far. Most of it is China's Sinopharm jab, and the rest from AstraZeneca and the COVAX vaccine sharing scheme. Deliveries, however, have been slow. All the available doses in Egypt at the moment are only the Sinopharm shots.
That is for several reasons. Because Egypt has a partnership deal with China to manufacture vaccines, Egypt underwent clinical trials as part of the third stage of the Chinese vaccine tests. And the Chinese vaccine has proved successful in Egypt and outside Egypt. Also, the other vaccines are not as easy to transport and store as the Chinese vaccines.
Experts say Egypt has opted for certain jabs that suit the conditions in the country.
The traditional vaccines are the Chinese vaccine, AstraZeneca and the Russian one, while Pfizer and Moderna are non-traditional. The traditional vaccine is the one created based on how previous vaccines have been made and tried before. Sinopharm is in this criteria, and this provides more security and efficiency. The new vaccines that use modern techniques are safe as well, but have not been tested enough as the traditional vaccine types used by Sinopharm, AstraZeneca or the Russian vaccine.
Egypt is currently negotiating with Russia to manufacture its Sputnik V vaccine locally, alongside Sinopharm. The aim is to have quicker supply of vaccines for Egypt's 100 million population and to export to the rest of the African continent. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Let's head over to Europe now. And in the Netherlands, Dutch police say a coronavirus testing center north of Amsterdam has been the target of an intentional attack. An explosion was reported before sunrise in the town of Boven-Karspel, which is currently seeing the Netherlands' worst outbreak. Authorities say they're examining the remains of the explosive device. The incident comes just days before the national election. The vote is largely seen as a referendum of the government's handling of the pandemic. Anger at health authorities has grown since January, with vandalism and riots leading to a nationwide lockdown. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the country will do what it can in talks with the European Union to improve the functioning of the Northern Ireland Protocol. The protocol involves rules post-Brexit to streamline goods inspections between Northern Ireland, which is no longer part of the EU, and Ireland, which remains in the EU. Britain says that it will give supermarkets and suppliers more time to adapt to the protocol. Britain and the EU have been in talks to try to solve trade disruptions due to the new rules in Northern Ireland. When UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has lamented the effects of the ongoing coronavirus pandemic on children and families. Speaking during a visit to a UNICEF art installation, Guterres termed the failure by many children to attend school as one of the terrible consequences of the pandemic. The art installation by the UN body calls attention to the COVID-19 education emergency and raises awareness about the need for governments to keep schools open. The installation, that is called Pandemic Classroom, is a model classroom made up of 168 empty desks, with each desk representing the million children living in countries where schools have been almost entirely closed. Well, despite efforts by the Kenyan government to provide education to all, people living in arid and semi-arid parts of the country still face difficulties in accessing learning. Marsabit County, which is largely inhabited by herders who usually migrate in search of pasture, getting access to schooling remains a challenge. But one local teacher is trying to fill this gap in education provision in his own way. CGTN Susan Mongeli is just from there and reports.
Every morning, teacher Boru Galgalo walks from one manyata to the next one, calling children to go to school. As the only teacher here, he has made it his mission to save the children from a life of illiteracy. Their families are pastoralists who often have to move around the region in search of pasture for their livestock. On many occasions, they relocate to remote areas where access to formal classroom is difficult. It is this situation that led Boru to set up a makeshift classroom that is mobile and can follow the families wherever they go.
We started the school under a shade. We got a little help from just well-wishers, a group of our own people who just contributed, donated for us.
Boru, who is a trained teacher, has enrolled 64 children in this classroom. He targets children between the ages of 3 and 6 years.
Due to their age, you know, they are very young. They cannot be taken to any other boarding schools away from their family because still they cannot help themselves.
The rate of absenteeism is high, as some parents would rather have their children look after livestock. According to data released by the National Bureau of Statistics in 2018, Marsabit County had the poorest education indicators in Kenya.
There was a time, in fact, I went for the holiday, but when I came to open the school, in fact, I could not find them. I decided even to collect information from just the neighbors who have been around there, where they shooted. They said they have shooted us almost around 40 kilometers away from the roadside. So it forced me now even to go where they were now.
The current schooling structure they have is supported through donations and cannot meet the increasing demand brought about by more children wanting to join classes. Attempts to get another teacher to support Boru have also not been successful. But despite the challenges, Boru presses on.
You see, I volunteer myself. I might even, you see, even where to sleep sometimes can be a problem to me. Because that house that we live together with the other family, in fact, there is husband and wife there. So sometimes I even spend in the wilderness too, until the dawn comes.
With the effects of climate change hitting hard and the availability of pasture for livestock dwindling, these families are unlikely to stop migrating. And for them, the most pressing issue is how to transport the mobile structure with them.
This unit can only be dismantled and reassembled 1 or 2 times. By the third time, it breaks down completely. Therefore, we would request that well-wishers provide us with a portable classroom, one that has wheels so that we can drag it wherever we go.
It might not be the ideal situation, but through this mobile classroom, Teacher Boru is determined to give these children a good start in life and ensure that they stand a chance at education so that in future they may be the drivers of change for their community. I am Susan Mongeli for CGTN in Marsabit County, Kenya.
Well, women are playing an integral role in wildlife conservation around the world, and in Uganda, a 22-year-old has dedicated herself to seemingly dangerous work, handling lion cubs, hyenas, and snakes at a local conservation center. Leon Senyange reports.
Another day at work for Holly Olive Akello. Part of her job at the CTC Conservation Center in central Uganda is looking after these 4 lion cubs. And this is her daily routine. Her love for wildlife started when she came across a snake as a child.
This is something that I've always wanted to do since I was maybe 5 years old, if I can remember well, because I remember when I went to the garden when my grandies were in the garden. So I went to the garden and I found this snake, the Gabon viper. It was just lying somewhere under the log. I picked it up and I liked the sound that it was making. It was hissing. So I carried it and brought it to my grandparents and asked them if I could play with it.
Moved by the experience then, Akello has put in a lot of work to get here. Already, her relationship with Ada, Nala, Sarabi and Vera is unusual.
Vera is stubborn. When you start playing with her, she sometimes gets a bit rough because she doesn't know how strong she is. But it's just being so excited. She gets so excited and I just like her the way she is. Then we have Nala. She's playful. She doesn't want you to touch her, but she wants to touch you.
After almost a year working with the lion cubs, Olive knows how to make herself a valued and well-loved member of the pride. And with the pumpkin bowls, their favorite, they take time to play. It is not only the lion cubs that Akello gets along with. There is Dexter, the playful Savo cat, and Altaf, the hyena. He loves her company too.
It all takes passion. You see, passion, and if you know your purpose in life, and for me, I know that my purpose in life is to really work with the animals, take care of the animals, and conserve nature.
While she is fully aware of how dangerous animals like these can be, her courage and love for wildlife overcomes her fears. And she wants to see more humans relate better with animals.
If you bring animals close to people's heart, there's a way that they're going to understand these animals much more better than them just thinking about them as monsters and just wanting to kill them.
Akello has dedicated her young life to protecting these and probably more wild animals, and she hopes her work can inspire many more young women develop a passion for conservation. Leon Sanyange, CGTN, Mpigi, Central Uganda.
Well, I'll be standing by to bring you more news, but for now, let's take a look at what's happening in the world of business with Uche.
Thank you, Hannah. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. The U.S. issues final anti-dumping tariffs on aluminium from 18 countries. And Zimbabwe seeks communal farmers to boost its macadamia production.
This has taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Well, let's start off with some international news. The U.S. Commerce Department has issued final anti-dumping duties on a common alloy aluminium sheet from 18 countries investigated. Now, affected countries in the Tuesday announcement include Germany, Brazil, Egypt, South Africa, and Spain. Germany had the highest anti-dumping rate, ranging from 49.4% to 242.8%, and the largest exports of aluminium sheet to the United States. The country exported $286 million worth of aluminium in 2019. The duties were announced just hours after Rhode Island Governor Gina Raimondo won confirmation as the new U.S. Commerce Secretary. The anti-dumping case and a companion anti-subsidy countervailing duty case were initiated under the Trump administration in March 2020. Common alloy aluminium sheet is used in building facades and truck trailer bodies to street sides. Now, the duties will come on top of 10% U.S. tariffs imposed on most aluminium imports by the Trump administration under a national security law. And heading to the continent now, Zimbabwe aims to increase its macadamia nut output by encouraging communal farmers to grow the crop. Currently, production is dominated by large commercial farms. Here's CGTN's Farai Mwakutuya reporting from Chipinge district in the eastern highlands of Zimbabwe.
James Maisiri planted these macadamia trees in 2004 after being allocated a farm during the land reform program. He's now encouraging other black farmers to take up the crop despite the prohibitive startup costs.
Truly speaking, the seedling of macadamia is very expensive. Then the inputs as well, they are very expensive. But as you start producing, I think the 5th year, that's when you return your expenses. The markets are ready, are there. And imagine on the world market, South Africa, which is producing the largest quantity, they are producing at 25% of what is needed on the world market.
Production is dominated by large commercial plantations, but inclusive financing models are increasing participation.
We want to rope in small-scale farmers who are incapacitated, who can't start their own plantations. So we wanted to help them. We wanted to design a program whereby we have a partnership of profit sharing at the end, but we will help them to start their own plantations at zero cost.
Robert Nyemba has heeded the call to grow the crop, turning a large residential stand into a peri-urban plantation. He's expecting his first harvest this year.
Maybe around a ton. For me, that would be a super achievement. After 4 years, you get even something big. To me, that's the start. Hopefully, it's the start of bigger things to come. I think there's huge potential. Yet, I think the fact that you can go for 4 years without getting anything back discourages quite a number of our farmers or potential farmers. It's a long time. 4 years is a very long time. But then the attraction of it being in demand should spur everyone.
Farmers here have coined a name for the macadamia nut. They call it Zimbabwe's brown gold, a moniker they hope will spur this crop to emulate the foreign currency generating capacity of the actual precious metal. Indications are promising.
In the next 3 to 4 years, the country can surpass the $30 million revenue, and maybe in the next 10 or so years, it can actually surpass around 50 million, because the potential is there. The various producers, the consolidators, value add, as well as processors, are now moving from actually exporting the nut and shell and are beginning to value add a little bit, cracking the nut, drying it.
Zimbabwe's Trade Promotion Agency is also trying to improve quality through capacity building training for extension officers. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Chipinge, Zimbabwe.
Meanwhile, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development has agreed to provide $361 million